careful what you say.
So, YouTube, mate.
YouTube.
Is that up? That's
Okay, people.
Yeah, sound. Yeah, George.
Yeah, happy days, Steve. Okay, people, you tuned in for that Wirral's carbon capture. We never got into the main room, but we're going to have to watch the meeting on the TV. Let's see how this goes.
Building structural services. Subcontract. It's
all out, isn't it?
Yeah.
Everything's out.
Okay, if the sound's any good on here, can you give us a thumbs up, please?
Yes, a lot of
Speaking to it.
Give us a thumbs up if the sound's up to scratch.
This is my mate Charles.
Hello, Charles. Okay, mate.
George. I'm Paul. Tom, is it? Ringo. Where's Ringo? That's me. Do you know what? And your job. Do you know what? I nearly done a WhatsApp to them the other week. And my missus said I'm Ringo.
This is the main man, Paul Carden. You're going live there, Paul.
Hey, what's your name? Stephen.
Tom.
Sorry? Tommy. Charlie.
My name's Charlie.
I might forget your name, but don't take it personally, William. I know how it goes. I'm the same.
Moving away the further from us, closer maybe.
Turn my phone.
I've won it. Stand down.
Please be seated. Thank you, members. Welcome to this extraordinary council meeting this evening. May I extend a warm welcome to the members of the public in attendance and those watching our webcast. I'd like to remind all members to speak clearly into the microphones for the benefit of those watching at home. We're here tonight to debate the motions and amendments submitted. Can I be really clear that this is a meeting in public and not a public meeting, so contributions to the debate will be restricted to members of the council. However, I am aware that a statement has been circulated to all members of the council by Laura Beveridge, Chair of Action Against CCS, and I am of the view that it would be beneficial for all the public present and the public watching at home to hear that statement this evening. Therefore, I'm exercising my discretion under Standing Order 3.2 to enable Laura to address the meeting. Can I remind members when addressing the mayor, you should stand if you are able to, and if you wish to raise a point of order under 15.12, that the member must indicate the rule or law which the member considers has not been complied with. Can I also please remind members to comply with the time limits for speaking this evening? When the red light turns on, members must finish their speeches immediately. And I think that's only fair to other members who wish to speak. In accordance with Standing Order 9.1 for extraordinary meetings, when 2 hours have elapsed after the commencement of the meeting, I shall interrupt the meeting and the member speaking must immediately cease speaking and sit down. The meeting shall then dispose of the item under consideration as if the motion that the question be now put had been carried. We will then vote on that and any remaining items. Can I also remind members of my expectation that the meeting is conducted in a manner that we can all be proud of and in accordance with our member code of conduct and member/officer protocol. Accordingly, I will interject immediately if I consider that our debate is not progressing in that vein. So if we move on to item 1 on the agenda now, declarations of interest. Members are asked to consider whether you have any disclosable, pecuniary and/or any other relevant interest in connection with any matters to be determined at this meeting, and if so, to declare it and state the nature of such interest. Can members please indicate now if you have any interest you wish to declare? No? Okay, thank you. So we move on to Mayor's announcements. I've been notified of the following apologies. Councillors Ainsworth, Cook, Cox, Onwemina, Martin, Rennie, Cameron, Gorman, Sullivan. And I also understand that Councillors Graham and Luxon Cooley should be in attendance but may be late. Okay? Are there any more apologies? No? Thank you. So I move on now to item 3, Peak Cluster Carbon Capture Pipeline. And I now invite Laura Beveridge to read out her statement to the Council.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, councillors, and thank you for the opportunity for me to read this statement here tonight. I want to begin by making one thing absolutely clear. This is not about NIMBYism. The people of the Wirral are not anti-environment, quite the opposite. We understand the urgency of climate change, net zero, and we want meaningful action to protect our planet. But what we cannot accept is the idea that environmental progress must come at the cost of our own environment, our homes, our safe space, other people's homes and livelihoods. We are being asked to accept a 200-kilometre CO2 pipeline from the Peak District to Cheshire and through the centre of the Wirral, for the CO2 to be compressed at an industrial plant and then to be stored offshore below the seabed, I beg your pardon. And we are told that this is progress, that this is inevitable, and that this is vital. And we're expected not to ask questions, to accept the inevitability of it, to be okay with the Peak Cluster representatives shutting us down at consultations, and to have the CEO, John Egan, shrug his shoulders when challenged and respond with, "I don't know, we aren't sure, we can't answer." We are also told that woodland will be disturbed, greenbelt land will be excavated, habitat will be disrupted, and infrastructure will be installed just 1.2 metres below ground on a publicly known route, an open invitation for vandalism or worse, terrorism. Because it might sound extreme, but this is the world that we are living in right now. At the coast, there is to be an above-ground installation, now projected to be closer to 8 football pitches in footprint, with vent stacks up to 50 metres high. That isn't minor infrastructure, that's industrialisation. Why should our land be sacrificed when alternative approaches exist? Why are we not prioritising technologies that capture the carbon dioxide at source and reuse that CO2 for energy, rather than transporting it long distances and storing it beneath the sea? Because let us be frank, that is not tackling climate change. That is not reducing emissions. That's just hiding them, pretending that they'll go away and leave it for the next generation or the one after that to deal with. Instead of the CO2 going into the atmosphere, it is going into ground beneath our seabed. And they may have been gas fields, but that does not make it risk-free. It simply relocates the risk. One only must look at the Lake Nyos disaster when 1,700 people were killed. A naturally held pocket of CO2, just like the gas fields, released 300,000 tonnes of CO2. And Peak Cluster are transporting 3 million tonnes of CO2 annually to start with. And please don't state this was a fluke, or one-off, because 2 years prior, the same thing happened at Lake Malone in a different area. There are many things that we can control, but nature is not one of them. The statement made by John Egan that the gas fields have held gas for millions of years and are therefore safe. Well, Lake Nyos was safe until it was not. And in 2018, Spirit Energy themselves stated that gas storage was not an option at the Morecambe gas fields due to the local geology. Or is there another reason? Would the CO2 displace what little oil and gas is left, making this a stealth fracking exercise? Given the vagueness of Peak Cluster's application, this is a real possibility. What do they not want us to know? We ask what happens in the event of a failure on land. We know CO2 is an asphyxiant. We know that pipeline failures have occurred across the world. We know it happened in Louisiana in 2024. We know it happened in Setausia in Mississippi on the 22nd of February 2020. Emergency services vehicles stalled because the CO2 displaced the oxygen. We know that 200 people were evacuated and 45 people were hospitalised, and this was in a village far less densely populated than the Wirral. And if the pipeline runs near critical infrastructure such as hospitals, what's the emergency plan? Where are the patients taken, and how quickly can an already stretched to breaking point emergency services respond? Who's trained for that? Who pays for it? And who manages it when those who should be called upon in an emergency are perilously close to the pipeline itself? The pipeline runs past at least 4 primary schools, and CO2 is a dense gas. In In the event of a leak, we know that pets and children are affected first. You only have to look at Gorebridge in Scotland. One of the reasons being is that they are closer to the ground. What happens when our babies and our children and our future end up in a situation where their safety is compromised for the sake of so-called progress? Should we not be protecting them? Should we not be learning from Satasha in Louisiana? Should we not be looking at other alternatives instead of placing money and greed above the future of our country and our society? We are told to trust that this technology will perform as promised. Yet independent studies by the Institute of Energy, Economic and Financial Analysis found that flagship CCS projects globally have underperformed. They stated CCS often overpromises and underdelivers. 7 out of 13 flagship CCS pipeline projects did not perform as expected. 1 failed outright. This is not speculation. These are cold, hard facts, unlike the information we are receiving from Peak Cluster. So what makes this pipeline different? Show us the data, show us the projections, show us the evidence. And who is monitoring this pipeline? Who is inspecting it? Who maintains it? Who protects it? Who prevents vandalism and the various activities along its length? And in 20 years' time, when Peak Cluster steps back, who carries the liability then? Is it the state? Is it the taxpayer? Is it us, the people of Wirral, who have already been expected to shoulder the burden by the desecration of land and compromise of our safety? I fully intend to be here in 20 years, as does my daughter and perhaps even her children. Are we transferring long-term risk to future generations for short-term political targets? Are we the guinea pigs? There's the economic impact. Estate agents in February 2026 have reported uncertainty surrounding property transactions along the route of the pipeline. The Wirral has always been proud of its strong local economy. We buy local, we support local, we live local. But if confidence drops and people choose not to move here and people start to move out, that affects our shops, services, our sports club, our community life and our identity. So who indeed profits from this? Because it's not the people of the Wirral. And let us not pretend that reinstatement equals restoration. You cannot excavate woodland and return it to its original ecological maturity with a landscaping plan. Once disturbed, some things simply cannot be replaced. These are not sensationalist questions, these are responsible ones. So no, this is not NIMBYism. This is about safety, this is about environmental integrity, it is emergency preparedness, and it is about long-term financial accountability. We are not saying do nothing. We are asking to prioritise solutions that do not ask one community to carry disproportionate risk when we know other technologies exist. We deserve transparency. We deserve knowing that trying to save the planet, we are not being asked to sacrifice our homeland, our safe space in the process. So I call upon all councillors here present, regardless of party ties, ask yourselves these questions and answer honestly. Stand with the residents of the Wirral and help us stop the CCS pipeline now. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura, for that inspiring speech. Members, full council is asked to consider a requisition notice signed by 6 members, which can be found on pages 1 to 4 of the council summons. As outlined within the notice, this extraordinary meeting has been convened to discuss the proposed Peak Cluster scheme. Although the council has no direct involvement or decision-making powers over the project, councillors have called this extraordinary meeting of full council to debate the whole issue. Members, we have received 3 motions this evening. The full motions can be found on pages 5 to 12 of the summons. The Conservative group has submitted an amendment to the Labour group motion, which can also be found on pages 1 to 8 of the supplementary pack. Now, I understand that the Labour group has accepted the Conservative group amendment as friendly, and perhaps if I could invite Councillor Skillicorn to confirm that that is the case, please.
That is correct, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. I can confirm, members, further that the Deputy Monitoring Officer is content that none of the requests contained within each motion are incompatible or negate with one another. This means all 3 motions may be voted through positively this evening if that is the will of the Chamber. And it's my intention to utilise Standing Order 15.15 to hold a joint debate on the motions. The Labour group will be invited to propose their motion first. Other groups will then be invited to move and second their respective motions in descending group size order. Following the end of debate, votes on each motion will then be conducted in ascending group size order, culminating with the Labour group motion. So with that, I call on Councillors Skillicorn and Angie Davis to move and second their motion, which is now amended.
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
So seconded, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. I call upon Councillors Jenkinson and Jason Walsh-MacDonald to move and second their motion.
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
Seconded, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. I now call on Councillors Kelly and Gilchrist to move and second their motion.
So moved, Mr. Mayor. Seconded, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. So we now move to the proposers. Councillor Skillicorn, you now have 5 minutes to speak to your motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Much has changed since I first drafted the motion before us this evening. In that time, our communities have come together. From a shared sense of concern and shock, a determined and organised campaign group has emerged, complete with a full committee and a chairperson. Laura and Kelly from this group initiated the first toilet gathering. They were instrumental in bringing residents and us as councillors together to form a team, a unified voice. I would like to take this point also to place on record our thanks to Mr. Mayor for making the necessary arrangements and adjustments to enable this meeting to take place so quickly. I'm sure everyone here tonight and in the audience are very, very grateful. Much has also changed since the glossy Peak Cluster sales brochures began dropping through people's letterboxes. Materials overflowing with manufactured positivity and selective data, clearly designed to obscure the scale of the disruption, environmental damage and ecological vandalism proposed to our peninsula. Last week, I attended a private meeting in Mells with Peak Cluster executives, along with our Leader of the Council, Deputy Leader and Leader representatives of some other political groups. The questioning of Peak Cluster was frank and direct. In my opinion, as the conversation progressed, the atmosphere became tense and the dialogue increasingly abrupt. For me, the outcome was deeply troubling. Peak Cluster appeared to have no intention of listening to local concerns, no intention of revisiting or altering their preferred route, and no evident compassion or regard for the impact on our homes, our environment, or our communities. Peak Cluster confirmed they have no plan B and gave very strong impression they do not care about our objections. They made it brutally clear that in their view, this project was going to proceed regardless. They indicated that they do not share our assessments of the importance of our local environment nature, or the health and well-being of our residents. At that point, the meeting abruptly ended. One must ask, do Peak Cluster really wish to be perceived as our public enemy number one, driven purely by profit and supported by fossil fuel interests? However, there is actually genuine hope. In recent years, 27 individual carbon capture, utilisation and storage projects, along with 2 major government-backed schemes, have been cancelled and paused. Those 2 government schemes were in fact larger than Peak Cluster. We know that government departments and inspectorates will consider a number of critical factors, including poor value for money compared with alternatives, high delivery and technology risks, uncertainty over actual emission reductions in real-world conditions, and crucially, planning and infrastructure constraints, including safety, routing and land use. There is further cause for reassurance, as our Assistant Director Chief Planner alongside our Planning Department have already submitted a detailed response on our behalf to the relevant government departments in relation to Peak Cluster's scoping report. That response was robust and comprehensive, and I thank you, and highlighted a series of vital issues, including air quality, biodiversity, landscape and visual impact, traffic and movement, historic environment and heritage assets, water, environment and flood risk, marine environment, socio-economic impacts, human health, materials and waste, and major emergency incidents and disasters, and finally, climate change. I've also been reassured that our local planning authority, highways teams and environmental officers stand ready to mobilise and to rigorously defend our area at every available opportunity, should this project seek to progress. Collectively, we fought and beat Levy Hughes Estates. We have done this before and we can do this again together. Please support our motion. We request that the government cancel a Peak Cluster project which cuts through 200 kilometres of countryside, communities and nature reserves. We formally oppose routing the Peak Cluster CO2 pipeline through the Wirral and submit objections to relevant planning and regulation authorities outlining safety, environment and community concerns where such concerns are substantiated. We call for a comprehensive, independent, verified environmental and safety impact assessment, including full public consultation within the Wirral. We demand robust emergency response planning, a legal binding regulatory framework. The long-term monitoring provisions should be protected. Should the project proceed despite local opposition. We advocate for alternative climate strategies that prioritise renewable energy, local green jobs and community-led decarbonisation rather than expanded fossil fuel-linked infrastructure. And finally, we will work collaboratively with neighbouring authorities, community groups and organisations to represent residents' concerns and protect Wirral's environment. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Skillerthorne. Councillor Jenkinson, you now have 5 minutes to speak to your motion.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Wirral Green Party is absolutely and unequivocally against this pipeline. In fact, it's hard to think of a worse solution than the one being presented to us. The basic premise that decarbonising doesn't involve decarbonising, but just moves the carbon from one place to another is a false one. Not only does it simply move the carbon dioxide, but in doing so, it provides a get-out clause for fossil fuel companies. It allows them to carry on regardless, without any thought to genuinely removing carbon from the cement industry, and those people that have made an absolute fortune from emptying the gas fields and polluting our atmosphere in the first place are now going to make an even bigger fortune by filling the fields with carbon dioxide that just should not be produced in the first place. The proposed AGI on the North Shore will be an abomination visually. A 50-foot chimney will stand out a lot worse than a sore thumb. It will be able to be seen for miles around and will spoil not only the look of our foreshore, but affect the sensitive wildlife ecosystem and the birds that congregate there. It will raise the levels of the Burkitt and Arrow Brook, which we are currently working to reduce with the Hoylake Cars wetlands. But not only would that project be negated, it will be overwhelmed several times over. Carbon capture and storage is a failing technology. Most of the gas fields are not living up to their promise. Even the House of Commons committee says so. And I was told at the end of the meeting that Councillor Skinner referred to, I was told by the Peak Cluster environmental scientists that within a couple of years of this project becoming active, around 16,000 lives will be saved due to the reduction in carbon dioxide going into the atmosphere. But so many more than that will be saved sooner than that. We are in a climate emergency by investment in warm homes, insulation, wildlife corridors, and cleaning our rivers and seas. These projects have multiple benefits for everybody on this planet, including the Wirral, not just the single benefit of making a profit for private companies. This pipeline must not be allowed to exist anywhere, not through the Wirral, not through Lancashire, not through anywhere. And to suggest that we should be looking at moving it somewhere else when it's dangerous is just not right. Lime-based cement, extracted from limestone, calcium carbonate, CaCO3, inherently must produce carbon dioxide. It's there in the chemical formula. Alternatives are plentiful around the world. Options that use waste products, such as bricks that are too damaged to be used again for building, slag from blast furnaces, fly ash from out-of-date coal power stations, old concrete ground up, even human hair are available. You can re-inject CO2 into concrete to make it lighter and stronger. Use recycled steel or recycled polymer filaments. We need British building standards to keep up with these innovations. While our researchers, whether they be in private institutions or our universities, investigate and scale up the alternatives, there is plenty we can do to genuinely decarbonise. We could allow short-term mitigations, such as putting the CO2 into trains and ships. Even better, we could capture the CO2 from the air right on top of the gas field.
Trees breathe it in.
Let's face it, it doesn't matter where a particular carbon dioxide molecule comes from. All that matters is that overall the amount of carbon dioxide is reduced.
Plant more trees.
One solution may not fit all, but there are a panoply of them, and each one will make its own contribution. Every tonne helps. We need the government to encourage, even oblige, the cement industry to genuinely decarbonise, not invest in the greenwashing we have before us. Then we will have a solution that benefits the people rather than private profits, and one that enhances our green and pleasant land. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jenkinson. Councillor Kelly, you now have 5 minutes to speak to your motion.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, I want to wind back a little from where we appear to be and then return to where we are. This whole thing seems to me to stem from the inescapable fact that carbon emissions are a major driver of climate change, which is real and needs to be tackled. The starting point for tackling carbon emissions is to look to eliminate them entirely. And this is being done for other hard-to-abate industries like steel making, energy generation as they transition from using fossil fuels. It has to be acknowledged that the carbon release associated with cement production comes not from blast furnaces or boilers, but from the process itself. It is suggested to us that new processes for cement production are being developed, and will reduce carbon emissions, and government needs to look at the viability of this for at-scale cement production. If this is not possible, then the only option may well be carbon storage in depleted offshore gas fields. The government is clearly committed to carbon storage. I've seen the rejection last week of a petition by the government, and that petition sought to end carbon capture and storage in its entirety. It might be a big ask to ask this council to lead some sort of campaign to end the idea of carbon storage. We may be able to concentrate on just talking about the scheme that we have in front of us tonight. So perhaps it's more about how you do the process safely and appropriately. For example, coal mines can also be used for carbon storage. It begs the question, why can't the Derbyshire coalfields be repurposed for storing carbon? They are, after all, closer to the source. We also think, Mr Mayor, if I were travelling from the Peak District to Liverpool Bay, I'd go up the M6 and along the M56. This should pass at Stanlow, where there are already industrial buildings and 12-bed shafts of size being discussed. I see no reason presented why the pipeline couldn't enter the water near Stanlow. Indeed, if we think about this, if I'm travelling up the M6, I may as well go all the way to Northern Bay and repurpose the plant that extracted the gas in the first place. We need to be persuaded, Mr Mayor, that these options are impossible rather than just challenging. The option of following motorway or rail routes with the pipe seems to me to be less damaging, particularly to agricultural and greenbelt land, than a pipeline that winds its weary way through Cheshire and Wirral countryside. I also don't think industrial plants somewhere on the north coast of Wirral of the size being talked about is in any way acceptable. In normal circumstances, normal planning terms, it will be a wholly alien and industrial feature in what is now a rural and open area. Industrialised plants on agricultural and greenbelt land is unacceptable to us. But this isn't just a matter for Peak Cluster. They want to build a pipeline, that's their purpose. Government's purpose and responsibility in all this is broader. They must be sure that cement production can't be changed, and if not, to tell us why not. They need to be sure that the Derbyshire coal mines can't be used, and if not, to tell us why not. Government needs to be sure the routes via existing links can't be utilised, and if not, to tell us why not. Government needs to explain why the industrial scale building can't be positioned in an industrialised area, and if not, to tell us why not. So back to the start, we need more facts from government. Ultimately, we need to ask, why is this project the one they've chosen to support? Mr Mayor, the government probably wants to do the right thing, but as we've seen over and over with government, sometimes they need to be dragged kicking and screaming to the inevitable U-turn. These first principle questions, though, are not just a matter for Peak Cluster. They're a private enterprise. Their business model is predicated on a pipeline and compression plant. Their consultation is based on how best to achieve their aim of a pipeline through Wirral. It's not a consultation based on whether this is the best option. It's for government to explain why they've adopted this option and rejected others. Why have they not consulted at the start on the most appropriate option for the region and simply awarded the contract to Peak Cluster to progress? Mr Mayor, passing my motion places the ball back in the government's court, for them to go back to first principles, for them to provide truthful answers to our community's questions, and for them to explain why less damaging options have not been followed. Mr Mayor, I ask the Council to accept it.
Thank you, Councillor Kelly. We'll now move to the debate. Anybody wish to speak? Yeah. Councillor Fowkes.
Okay, thank you. Excellent contributions from your statements. Excellent contributions thus far I'm very proud of the Labour Group's stance on this and the early mobilisation spearheaded by Mark. I believe we've been here before in certain aspects of government policy. People can remember when parts of Wirral Coast was identified for shale gas fracking, and we came together as a council using our expertise, our lobbying power. Eventually, we said we didn't want fracking here, and that debate, similar to the way the debate's going here, went down the full path to actually the government not banning fracking, so no more fracking was taking place as those things were there. And I see very close similarities to that. I'm still not someone who's lived and worked most of his life in the chemical industry. I still need full persuasion about carbon capture and the technologies and everything behind it. I think we are facing the challenge of what we didn't do many years ago. If we'd been better at environmental policies, if we hadn't have gone short term and each government changing policy, and even the flat earthers and naysayers saying there's no such thing as a climate emergency, we may not have been at this point where we've had to look at some very difficult industries to do carbon capture and save our planet. But my view is that we are at a point where we need to say something and say something loud. We've had other government-imposed things that we reacted to very quickly. I remember when we wanted to put the asylum vote in the docks at Birkenhead. We rallied together, I think all parties came together and said, no, you're not putting that where we want. And this is where we're at with this. So I think we're in a good place. We've also done our bit, Mr. Mayor. We've actually done our bit. You only have to look off our coastline for the wind farms, many wind farms that we've built. Well, we actually then put the pipe, the cables through the Wirral in a not dissimilar fashion than we have now. So I would say to those, the environmental bodies, the environmentalists, Wirral's done its bit. Wirral has shown its willingness to involve in environmentally friendly industries, and we've done so. I would say we've done our bit. But I think we're in a powerful position, Mr. Mayor. The reason why I think that is, one, this council chamber has come together as one. I think we will come together as one. And that cannot be underestimated as a powerful voice, because we are the people's representatives. We have MPs locally based who can have influence, and we must use them to the full. But most of all, Mr. Mayor, the power we have is up in that gallery across the Wirral. The people of Wirral have become united as one to repair this pipeline, and I think that's our biggest card we can play, and I congratulate them for organising themselves to where we are. Mr. Mayor, I support all the motions tonight.
Councillor Lewis.
All the motions.
Thank you, Mayor. And it's always a pleasure to follow, particularly when you're in agreement with Council Clark. It doesn't happen very often. So perhaps it's a sign of the scale of the issue before us. Mayor, as councillors, many of us will be used to, well, there's no way of dressing this up, many of us will be used to being accused of running crap consultations as a council. Ones where we go to the motions, we ask the questions, and we ignore the answers and carry on as we're going to. I can't think of a worse textbook case of how not to win friends as what Peak Cluster has done. It really is lamentable. Their consultation with the public is not a consultation, it's a tick box exercise, because they believe they can ignore the people of Wirral and every other county that this abomination is going through. Like many people in this council chamber, the first I heard about this was when leaflets started arriving, and it was my colleague, Councillor Vidal Wilson, who returned from the meeting of the Silver Massing Village Conservation Society, where residents had received their leaflets telling them about Peak Cluster's wonderful plans for our borough. Since then, we've had the campaign that we've heard from tonight from Laura and the people involved in that campaign, where it's mobilised people across the borough. And indeed, at the weekend, we had the disappointment of the petition. Now, what I would say, Mayor, to those who self-included, is not to be too disappointed with the fact it's been rejected. It's been rejected primarily by civil servants who received that notice, that petition, prepared the answer, and sent it out to the 17,000 people who signed that petition. I don't believe that the ministers involved were involved in that decision to reject that petition, because that would be political suicide. Mayor, we had a meeting, as Councillor Skillick referenced, with some of the people who run Peak Cluster,
And it was all very nice meeting tear biscuits and all the rest of it, as you'd expect. But what they couldn't do was answer the questions. There's very specific questions of what they were offering the people of Wirral. I asked what was being emitted. This was a question that the planning inspectorate, who will decide this application with Ed Miliband, the planning inspectorate said in their scoping opinion of the initial application of the peak cluster, they said you are unclear to peak cluster, you are unclear as to what will be emitted. So we asked the question. I asked the question to me, and they said it's mostly CO2. Well, anybody who's been involved in local government will say, well, okay, mostly, what about the rest of it? They said, well, 96% is CO2. Okay, fine, it's the 4%. And they said various compounds, but I can't tell you what they are. It could be to 70 different compounds. Well, compounds of what? They should know at this stage what they're planning to emit into the atmosphere if they had an above-ground installation at Morgan, pumping out God knows what over the environment that we're all in. Now, tonight, Mr. Mayor, we are fairly united, I think, certainly with the public, certainly against this application. We've seen other meetings where councillors spend lots of time talking to councillors, getting very excited. But what we have tonight, Mr. Mayor, is to send a very clear signal, not only to the public that we are on their side, which is fairly unique sometimes with this council, but we are on their side, and that what we have to do is to get Wirral's MPs, Wirral's 4 MPs, some of whom are very senior, some of whom are very ambitious, to use the leverage that they have to go from this meeting, and those 4 MPs will tell them in crystal clear terms that we expect them to put pressure on Ed Miliband. Because Ed Miliband, as the Council of Facts said, Ed Miliband has form when it comes to this. Underground coal gasification that we proposed in the Dean and Hilbury, that was when he was the previous Secretary of State 15, 16 years ago, and he was forced to U-turn because of public opinion. So he's done it before, he can U-turn again on this one, given the fact that this Council and the public are completely, utterly against this nonsense. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Raymond.
Thank you, Mr. I've given a great deal of consideration to this proposed pipeline at the AGI, both as a local councillor and as a mother and grandmother. Decisions made about this development will particularly affect our children and grandchildren, who, depending on their ages, will have no say in the decisions taken, but will live with their consequences. We recognise the need to reduce the production of carbon dioxide in the manufacturing processes of such as production of cement, and drastically reduce the amount of carbon dioxide entering our atmosphere. We are being asked to support the proposed pipeline through Wirral, along with the coastal AGI, without being given adequate information. There has been little or no information as to why this is the preferred method to reduce carbon dioxide entering the atmosphere. There has been no information regarding other options available to achieve this goal and for the reasons for them being discounted. There have been no detailed reasons given why the proposed pipeline follows the given route. There are no facts and figures about the difficulties and costs of alternative routes. There is inadequate information regarding the extent of any environmental damage due both to the construction and the ongoing damage as a result of the pipeline. We have been given vague assurances that damage to the environment will be limited, mitigated as best they can be, but nothing concrete. There is no guarantee that damage done on Wirral's environment will be adequately compensated for, or that this compensation will take place on Wirral. Fourthly, the proposed sites for the AGI and its 50-metre venting tower are in a non-industrialised part of Wirral, which includes a floodplain, and as such can't be seen as suitable sites. There has been nothing cited that addresses the possible increased flood risk to residential properties due to this development. A development that's likely to have considerable effects on local wildlife, causing considerable ongoing disturbance to wildlife corridors. We have no guarantees that either the short-term jobs in construction or the longer-term ones on ongoing monitoring and maintenance will go to rural residents. We look at being left with a lot of the damage to our small peninsula with no obvious benefit. Lastly but not least, owing to the nature of licences being issued, any damage done to the marine environment, which may occur along our coast, is not part of this consultation. In summary, until such time as we receive adequate and acceptable answers to the questions posed by this project, it is not one that we can begin to support. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I thought it might be helpful at this stage to say I've got 13 more speakers on my list. And if I just read them out in the order to save people having to keep jumping up and down, the next speaker that I'll take in this order will be Councillor Gray, Baldwin, Greer, Andrew Hodson, Mountney, Green, Booth, Cathy Hodson, Graham Davis, Cooper, Williams, Wilson and Hovel. So I'll be taking those, and okay, and there's 3 more, 4 more, I'll add them to the list now. I'll take them at the end. Okay? So, Councillor Gray.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Many of us here support serious action on climate change, but projects like Peak Cluster raise a difficult question of emissions or building expensive infrastructure that allows high-polluting industries to continue largely unchanged. Carbon capture and storage is often presented as the climate solution, yet globally it has struggled to deliver as well. Many projects fail to meet the promise of capture, and even when captured, CO2 must be monitored and contained safely for generations. Before we lock our community into infrastructure designed to prolong heavy industrial emissions, we should ask, would the same investment deliver greater climate benefit if directed towards genuinely reducing emissions at source? Around the world, the cement industry is already reducing emissions by using less clinker and new materials. Construction materials are increasingly part of the circular economy. Concrete from demolished buildings can be crushed and reused, the industrial byproducts incorporated into lower carbon cements. This creates opportunities for circular industrial hubs, keeping skilled jobs and supply chains rooted in local communities. A just transition means transforming industries so workers and local economies are part of building a low-carbon future. Other industries have shown this is possible. Orsted on our doorstep demonstrates that large fossil fuel-dependent companies can transition to renewable business models while protecting jobs. Peak Cluster is delivered through a dedicated project company formed by cement and lime producers and other investors to build CCS infrastructure. While the cement companies also pursue circular economy and low-carbon alternatives, the project itself is CCS focused. The danger is that large public investment in capture could overshadow upstream innovations that directly reduce emissions. We should be careful not to spend public money locking in yesterday's industrial pollution instead of investing in tomorrow's solutions. CCS should be the last resort, not a way to prop up high-emission industries. Protecting our environment also means protecting the landscape and communities around us. The Wirral's Greenbelt provides vital biodiversity, open space and environmental protection. It should not face unnecessary pressure from infrastructure that many residents oppose. The choice is not between jobs and the environment, or industry and climate responsibility. It is between genuinely adapting or just hiding pollution and falling behind the real innovators around the world. We should reduce emissions at source, support workers through a just transition, and protect the communities and landscapes we represent. That is climate leadership. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Baldwin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The concrete industry is one of the most polluting industries in the world. So this project aims to make Cheshire and Wirral the exhaust pipe for 30 million tonnes per year of dangerous pollutants, and the process which had been phased out and superseded years ago. How long do modern concrete buildings last? High-rise flats and offices were cheap, but a disaster. Imagine the consequences of faults developing anywhere along the pipeline, as they do on concrete bridges. Carbon dioxide is heavy in the air, so it can spread over a wide area as
fixating any living and any body nearly absorbed by the soil to perform carbonic acid, which is deadly to wildlife. There are many documented disasters caused by CO2 leaks. We've heard of some of those tonight. The proposed Wirral Mills pumping station, covering approximately 8 football pitches and a precious greenbelt recreational area, has a 50-metre high emergency exhaust pipe operating at very high pressure. How can this be guaranteed to be safe? The pipe from the station carries the pollutant gas under the Irish Sea, where it will be stored, we are told, beneath impervious rock. But who can guarantee that a ship dragging its anchor, we've heard of that before, would not fracture this pipe? Who can guarantee that seismic activity will never ever crack impervious rock? As I've already said, carbon dioxide mixed with water forms carbonic acid. The Irish Sea will have its flora and fauna wiped out in the area of the leak. CO2 stored underground at a rate of 30 million tonnes per annum would soon become a ticking time bomb. It is time to stop covering the planet with concrete, which is a major cause of flooding, and revert to building the traditional, durable and replaceable materials that won't pollute the planet, while leaving room for water-absorbing, nice, pleasant green areas. This is not what was promised in Labour's manifesto. They said they would listen and consult. I'm still waiting for them to begin listening. Consultations so far have simply been ignored. I will continue to vote Labour in this budget. People are already saying they will never vote Labour again under the current breaking of promises made. It is time to start listening at Wirral and Westminster before it is too late. We have had a plethora of new terms. This needs to be another one. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. We are in a climate emergency. We do need to decarbonise and fast. For that reason, I'm just reminded about peat cluster when I initially heard about it. However, peat cluster isn't the right solution. There are better solutions out there. Solutions that are more technically efficient, more cost-effective, less carbon-intensive, and less disruptive to our landscape. The Committee of Public Accounts report that peat cluster will cost £22 billion. They recommend the government consider whether alternative approaches could be more cost-effective. They say it is unproven technology and may not capture as much carbon as expected. As one example of an alternative approach, Material Evolutions, not far from here in Wrexham, have managed to produce cement in a way that cuts CO2 emissions by up to 85% when compared with traditional methods. Wirral doesn't exist in a vacuum, though. The idea that emissions produced elsewhere have nothing to do with us is just not accurate. We have large regeneration ambitions, which I fully support. We're not going to achieve them without using cement. We are responsible for the products we consume, not just those we produce. And ultimately, it doesn't matter where emissions are produced, they contribute to global heating and affect everyone, our young people most of all. So no to peat cluster, but we do need to embrace workable solutions and embrace them quickly. And to residents who've emailed councillors to express their opposition to this and who have taken the time to turn up tonight, thank you for making your voices heard. As the Mayor said at the beginning, though, we don't make the decision on this. It's a national infrastructure project and Parliament makes that decision. So if you haven't already, contact your MP. Like Councillor Lewis said, they do have influence here. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Andrew Hodgson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm glad I can speak tonight because I do care deeply about Wirral, our communities, our coastline, and the future we're leaving to the next generation. That's why I am concerned as a councillor about the proposed carbon capture and storage pipeline planned to run across our area. And as I believe, as Councillor Fouch was saying, so does every other single councillor in the chamber tonight, whatever party they represent. but I don't believe we should be making this political. We should be acting together as one unit to fight this pipeline. We're being told that this project is necessary to tackle climate change, but the reality is more complicated. Carbon capture and storage is still an uncertain, extremely expensive technology around the world. Many CCS projects have failed to deliver the emissions reductions they promised. Some have been cancelled after billions were spent. And before we commit our communities and landscapes to this infrastructure, we should be asking whether it truly works and who really benefits. And we should be asking the costs, as Councillor Howard Newman said before. Secondly, this proposal risks turning places like Wirral into industrial corridors. Pipelines carrying compressed carbon dioxide will run close to towns, farmland and natural areas. While supporters say the risks are low, leaks can and do happen. CO2 is not harmless at high concentrations, and pipelines failed elsewhere have shown how dangerous sudden leaks can be. Our residents deserve transparency and safety, not reassurance after decisions have already been made. There's also a bigger issue here. Carbon capture can become an excuse to keep polluting industries running as usual. Instead of investing billions into capturing emissions after the fact, why not invest that money directly into renewable energy, home insulation, public transport and clean industries? Those solutions can cut emissions at the source and create jobs without locking us into decades of new fossil fuel infrastructure. The world has enormous potential to be part of the real climate solution. We have tides, we have innovation, we have communities ready to support sustainable change. What we should not become is a testing ground for a technology that allows major polluters to delay the transition we urgently need. So this isn't about denying climate change. Quite the opposite, it's about choosing the right solutions, solutions that protect our communities, generally reduce emissions and invest in a cleaner rather than prolonging past. On another note, I've been contacted by two eminent professional Dr. Phil Potton and Professor Griffiths have concerns that the case has not come to the notice of the Council, concerns all due care taken regarding the route of the Peak Cluster Pipeline, which is due to leave land and enter Liverpool Bay through the middle of the world's most important ancient site, prehistoric Roman and Viking beach. So both of them are concerned that we do look into this and make sure that we don't conclude now, Mr. Mayor. 3 minutes is not enough time to expand on a very important subject, but I urge the decision makers to pause, reconsider and listen to the people who live and work here. Wirral deserves better than being a route for another industrial pipeline. Let's endeavour to invest in safer, proven forward-thinking, looking climate solutions our future generations deserve. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Green.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you and the Labour Group for facilitating this meeting this evening. As Mark knows, as we spoke about this, there are elements within some of these resolutions that we may quibble with, and he explained why he put them in, so we would quibble with them. But tonight is not a time for that, Mr. Mayor. The time, what we're interested in tonight is the outcome, and that outcome must be a united council voice. I'm therefore pleased that the Labour Group have accepted the Conservative amendment as friendly, allowing this chamber to deliver an amended motion that an overwhelming majority, and I hope a unanimity of members here can support. Exactly what our residents expect, and indeed what they deserve. Mr. Mayor, while speaking of our residents, I want to place on record our thanks to everyone who's mobilising against this frankly ludicrous proposal, and can I join in the congratulations for Laura, who I thought spoke really well and encapsulated the issues that we need to address. I want to reassure them that the Conservative group in Wirral hears their concerns, understands their fears, and will not simply stand by while cement firms, enabled by the Secretary of State and by the Treasury, attempt to bulldoze through our precious greenbelt and construct their above-ground monstrosities on our peninsula. Our real and legitimate concerns about resident safety, the destruction of the greenbelt, and the irreversible impact on our ecosystems and well-being have been brushed aside by, I would say, the government, some might have been civil servants that indicate they're not listening. But here in Wirral, Mr. Mayor, we're made of stern stuff. Our residents won't accept this. They will rally, they will demonstrate, and they will make this government take notice, and we stand with them, Mr. Mayor. So tonight, I'll be calling on all councillors to show a united front and send a powerful signal, all 66 of us, to sign a letter that campaign groups have asked for. A letter to send a clear, unambiguous message to the Secretary of State and local MPs that the Peak Cluster pipeline is not welcome here. I therefore commend the amended motion to the Council. Thank you.
Charles. See you next time, mate.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. So, yes, rising this evening to speak in support of the amended motion. As an amendment, which we're very happy to hear was accepted as a friendly amendment, which I'm most grateful to Councillor Steele and Councillor Davis. First, Mr. Mayor, I wanted to also recognise the fantastic turnout which has been mentioned from the people of Wirral, as well as the local tonight, also in the past 2 years, which has sustained real momentum and energy behind this campaign. Members across this chamber, Mr. Mayor, and the residents and regulators, expect us as the council to protect and serve their interests through direct action and united message to the government.
Next time,
Yeah, see you, George.
At its heart, Mr. Mayor, and unbreakable principle, Wirral people are pause and the government's carbon capture.
Okay, people are leaving town hall to go to central government. They'll try and push it through, won't they? Let a look at this building before we go. Yeah, so all the councils against the carbon capture. Front. Just see the live building streets ahead there, they're not lit up really this evening. But yeah, there was a good turnout this evening, this afternoon. People don't want this carbon capture. Okay, I'm going to sign off.